He's pretending.
I'm actually doing that for a reason. Get used to it, is what I'm trying to say. I'm playing some music off my MP3 player, which happens to be in my watch. Let me think, what was that? That was, you didn't hear it, of course. That was Meredith Brooks. The song's named Bitch. Yeah, okay, it's 1 o'clock. Let's get started. No, that was a demonstration for a reason. Because I'm going to be talking about, although I'm going to be talking about podcasting, I'm really talking about a new world, a new foundation upon which to deliver educational content, and how we might exploit that, and also to get feedback for an experimental service that CALI will be making available soon. All right? So I call this ClassCaster, Podcasting Meets the Classroom. But I feel like before I dig right deep into the geekiness of all this, I should back up a little bit and make sure the basics get covered, but I promise I'll be very fast on this. All right? Come on in. There's lots of empty seats, but you have to call around people, and I don't mind if you move around a bit. All right, y'all know what blogs are, right? Anybody not know what a blog is at this point? Good. But maybe fewer of you know, or you've heard of RSS, but don't know much about it. So let's do a little cover there. Okay, lots of blogs out there. What, 8 million blogs, or something along those lines. Every single one of them a law professor. It seems that way, doesn't it? Now you can do a blog, or I should say, and you can also do a blog that's got something called an RSS feed. It's usually a feature of the software or the service that you're using. All right? RSS stands for really simple syndication. There's a protocol written by Dave Weiner, who's now a Berkman Fellow at Harvard. He sort of invented blogs, or invented the idea of them. And he's been hosting a blog for 8 years or something called Scripting News. All right? So here's the deal. With a blog with an RSS feed, you can obtain some software or go to a website and access an RSS aggregator, where instead of having to go type in the URL, visit that blog, type in the URL, visit that blog, it pulls all the titles together for you in one place. And so you can sort of scan them and decide to read at that point. It's an aggregator. It aggregates entries in blogs. Simple enough, right? Usually it runs inside of a browser. Some of the more advanced features of aggregators is the ability to filter. You know, I don't want to listen to everything that this guy has to say, just when he talks about this thing. Come on in. It's okay. Any chairs? Anybody's there got a chair next to them? Raise their hand. Chair. Yeah, probably best to go ahead. Let me think if I can show you my aggregator. I have to actually exit PowerPoint to get to my browser, which I don't know if it works. I didn't plug it in, so never mind. I didn't plug my wireless in. I didn't follow those instructions. All right. So an RSS feed underneath the hood is actually just an XML file. And an XML file, as you know, is just text. All right. Now at this point, this is actually pretty powerful. Is there anybody in the room that remembers a company or a piece of software called PointServe? I think it was called PointServe. Is it PointCast?
Remember?
You install it as like a screensaver, and it promiscuously would start running and pulling down stuff and all that. And then there was another service, I don't even know the name of it. Come on in. There was another service, I don't remember the name of it. You go to a website, you click, and it would fax you your personal newspaper or something like that. Well, the whole idea of personalized newspapers never caught on, at least as a profit way of doing things. But blogs or RSS aggregators have a way of sort of doing it, personal information or personal feeding. Now, the thing you got to remember, though, is there's a lot of information coming down that river, and you should sort of view it as it goes by, and if you're not going to look at it, you can always get it back later. It's archived somewhere. But chances are you're going to ignore a lot that goes by. Right? That's sort of built into the idea of RSS aggregators and blogs. All right. Well, Dave Weiner did something really smart. He also programmed into the original specification, or maybe he added it later. I don't know the history exactly. Something called an enclosure tag. All right? Now, let's see if my website will work, because I have a definition here. If I can't find it here, I've got it someplace else. The enclosure tag lets an RSS feed, typically from a blog, include things besides text, like audio or graphics or video or, for you computer people, binary objects, non-textual objects. All right, I can't pull it up right now. And what that means is your RSS feed could be XML plus whatever enclosures there are, which is text with just about anything else. All right? Something very powerful. This is a very infrastructure sort of thing, but it's a very powerful mechanism that you can put other things on top of. Let's go look at some examples here. So some Yahoo comes along and records an MP3 and decides to stick it, upload it to their blog and enclose it in their blog. All right? Some other Yahoo comes along and downloads or reads the MP3. So they have to click on it, they have to download it, and they can listen to it on their computer. All right? Simple idea. Now, if the RSS aggregator is iPod aware, right? And what that means is it knows the directory where to put MP3s so that when you plug your iPod into its cradle, it automatically gets copied down. That's pretty much all there is to it being iPod aware as an RSS aggregator goes, for what I'm talking about here. Well, then it becomes a podcast, because you can imagine people at night plug their iPod in, they choose a bunch of blogs where there's music or where there's commentary or NPR or something like that, which is recorded audio. And in the morning, on their way to work, all they do is pop the iPod out, start listening, and skipping by things they don't want to listen to. It's TiVo for the internet audio/radio world. Right? That's a powerful idea too. The most powerful piece about this is how automatic it all can be made. So people recording stuff, put it on their blog, it's on the iPod without somebody going to a website saying file save as, copying it into the right subdirectory. It's a one-click system or a no-click system. Right? That's what I mean by a new foundation. Now, turns out that Pew, folks who do internet research, did a survey, and they found out that 20% of people under the age of 30 already own an MP3 player. Not as cool as my watch, but some sort of MP3 player. Right? And that number is on, and that level of adoption is on a pretty steep adoption curve. All right, so that means at least right now, 1/5 of your law students probably have an MP3 player, if you don't count their laptop. These are personal or portable MP3 players. All right, let's keep that in mind. Now, there are already tons of websites. This is just one where I grabbed a snapshot, where you can download not music to listen to on your MP3 player or your iPod, but idiots yammering away, I guess. No. Actually, the quality isn't people recording 5, 10, 15, 20-minute shows, radio shows, I don't know. The terminology, podcasts, hasn't caught up yet, where they're talking about something that they're interested in. It sounds like a blog, except it's audio. Right? And if you see here, there's 1,300 for entertainment, 400 for computers and internet. Look at the top 10, I like that. BBC, NPR, porn. Porn podcast. Don't go there. Comedy, music, Air America. All right, the Democrats are beating Rush. So there's actually lots of this going on. And podcast, when I started working with Elmer on ClassCaster, I did a search for podcast in Google, and it was one of those times when it came up with like 6 hits. And I'm like, we're early. Because now, of course, it comes up with 600,000 or something. Right? But I always thought that podcasting was not like a way for any Yahoo to just tell me what they thought of Revenge of the Sith. What did you think of Revenge of the Sith? I was like, right? But rather, maybe it's a mechanism by which education could be delivered to students, so that they could use downtime like working out, driving, classes they don't like. They could be listening to lectures on things that they do like. Or there you go. So let's yank that Yahoo out. Let's stick a teacher in there who's recording something, an instructor who's recording something, and making it available for students through this new foundation, through a blog that has an RSS aggregator, where the MP3 is on the enclosure, so it ends up on the iPod automatically. All right? But here's the problem. Your average teacher or law instructor is going to be rather intimidated by the idea of all these new words, podcasting, blogging, RSS, aggregators, and things like that. And I actually got the idea for ClassCaster while I was reading or watching Peter Martin. Who was that? Was it the last conference? Yeah, it was a year ago, when he was holding a training session for faculty on how to create audio using Audacity. And I saw that people who were motivated or willing could figure it out and do it, but that I really wanted something that could be made available or that could be accessible to more than just techie faculty. Right? So we came up with this idea, and it's called ClassCaster. It's a new service. If you go to classcaster.org, you'll see some stuff there, but not much is working, unless Elmer's in the room and tell me differently. He's not. It's like a classroom, but podcasting, but it goes way beyond the classroom. But the name ClassCaster just sounded so good, so we kept it. The point of it is that even Luddite faculty can handle this. And I'll explain why. By the way, it's still very experimental. All right. The basic premise of this is a telephone is a microphone. Sounds like a simple idea. But what's not there is a computer. That's why the Luddite faculty can handle it, because they're not being told how to figure out how to plug in a USB port or click a button to record or stop or anything like that. and make a phone call. And then the phone call gets posted to a blog. And then the blog gets aggregated to the subscriber, and then it gets dumped to the iPod or the MP3 player, and we're in business. Now, you don't believe me that this works. Let me first show you how it would work, and then I'll demonstrate that. All right? So you register at CALI when class starts, or when you want to make a recording, you make a phone call, you teach the class. Now, typically, you would make that phone call with a wireless, sorry, not a wireless, a hands-free. You wouldn't be sitting there teaching the class like this. That might look a little silly. All right, so I'm going to make that phone call, and I'll kick on my speaker here. I've got a good connection.
Welcome to ClassCaster. After the tone, please record your understanding. Stop recording.
Hi, I'm here talking about ClassCaster, and so the next step after they teach the class is that the students would download to the iPod or listen to the lecture by their web. Alternatively, the faculty member could download the MP3, do some editing, and then re-upload it. Get rid of the expletive deleted or the mountainers or things like that, if they so desire, or repackage it for future use in distance learning. All right. What do I hit, Tom?
Yeah. You know where you're at?
I haven't set it up. I just realized.
Where you review your lecture at. Press 4 to stay your lecture at.
Because without the internet, it's not so.
Elmer, I'm going.
Oh.
You have a patch cable?
Yeah.
All right, well, while you're doing that, explain the next one. Well, recording an hour-long lecture to class might not be the best way to do this. Yeah, and then I have to configure the wireless card. Read this faster than plug that in. And we haven't actually played with how long it takes to convert an hour-long lecture, but I don't know. I think that's something. I think some people will want to record, would be willing to record their lectures. And even though, and it's interesting, when you video record somebody doing this, if the lighting is bad or if the sound is scratchy, people are rather unimpressed by it. They have high expectations for video to be very good quality. If you give them a scratchy recording, however, they just think that they're going through a tunnel or something. And they're more forgiving about reasonably good audio. You know what I'm saying? Audio's got a whole different sort of sensorium around it than video does. Should I try to go see the second? There it is. It says Law 101 mode, right?
It's up there.
www.law101.
No, W.
Yeah, that's right. I know I got this pretty quick. ClassCaster. It's there? Cool. So I already know it's going to work. All right, so it's, 3 minutes ago it posted. I'm going to click here and play this. And it should open up as an MP3. And whatever my default application is for that. Not media player.
Talking about ClassCaster, so next step after this video, when they teach the class, is that the students would download the iPod or
You know what I was doing? I had the speakerphone on and I was holding it. So, Luddite faculty can do this, but not technical.
What's the bit rate?
Okay, it's a little bit better because I pulled it away from it.
All right, rate is 8K, yeah, mono.
To start. All right, it's just going to go over.
And there's actually a technical reason why that's the rate that has to do with the phone system on the back end that's actually recording the calls. It's creating 8-bit mono wave files. So obviously you You can make them 16-bit, but it just adds things in that you don't want there. So that 8-bit mono comes out, and actually, if you actually use a hands-free headset where you've got a quality with a closer mic, or if you use a landline, if you actually use like a dial-up phone, the quality sounds even better. I keep telling Jen to quit using the speakerphone, because that's like the worst possible quality, because there's all that background noise.
Yeah, that's true. I want you to be able to hear what I'm doing at the same time as seeing it. All right, so that was a successful demonstration. I made a phone call. I recorded about 20 seconds, and within about 10 seconds, it was up and available on a website for anybody. And so if that was a website, a blog that had an RSS feed, then it would go through that sort of automated process of people being able to receive that.
It is a blog that has an RSS feed, and you can, if you're familiar with tools like iPods that go out and actually harvest MP3s from websites, iPod will grab that feed and download that MP3 right to your hard drive.
It's your iTunes directory.
To your iTunes directory, and then it's on your iPod.
Right. Now another, perhaps a more realistic possibility for using this is a situation where like there's a hot case or something, the Terry Schiavo case. Let's say a faculty member knows one of the lawyers in the case, but it's a pretty low possibility that you'll be able to get the lawyer to come to class while the case is going on or something like that. But you can usually, if you have friends like that, you can get 5 minutes of their time or 10 minutes of their time. So in this case, they might make a call first to ClassCaster, because now I'll divert and say ClassCaster is actually a PBX running on Linux with Plog software. All right, Asterisk Linux Plog at this point. All right, so it's a phone system that can answer a phone. So you can call ClassCaster and conference in this other person and ask them a few questions. So what about this defense? And did you try that? And did you try that? And then say thank you very much. Of course, reveal that you're recording the conversation. Hang up and boom, it's on a blog. Or it's on a blog behind a password, because maybe you don't want to make it available right away or don't want it to be fed right away. At which point they can go to class and play the interview with the person. It's like having an instant guest speaker sort of situation. You know? And after class, the students can re-listen to it or download it to their iPods and listen to it again. All right? So that's just the beginning, because I started to think, oh man, there's all sorts of cool audio legal education ideas that we might be able to do with this. All right? The ones I just talked about were like pre-recorded interviews with attorneys or clients or people in current events. Phoning in lectures instead of canceling a class. Noted. I'm not going to be able to make it, so I'm just going to sit here in my pajamas and I'll phone the lecture in. And I'll tell the students, go to my blog and listen to this 30-minute lecture instead of class. So nothing's being lost, so to speak. When I say that, though, a lot of times faculty say, well, then they'll never come to class. I guess there's a really old New Yorker joke about the first one is students saying, you know, mind if I take your lecture? Sure. And then the next one, the guy's lecturing and there's 300 tape recorders at every seat. And then in the final one, there's 300 tape recorders recording and one tape recorder where the faculty is playing. So yes, this could cause something like that to happen in this. One idea I got from a school I was visiting a couple of months ago was audio exam reviews. They get all these questions, faculty get all these questions, you know, what's on the final, what about this, what about this, what about this? And one faculty member said, you know, I noticed that I spend a lot of time typing it up, you know, very precise, careful answers. And what the students do is they take that textual email, they do a copy, paste into the outline, and then they forget to read it before the exam. He said, no, but if I were to record something, they wouldn't be able to do anything but listen to it. And because it's at my pace, it would be like a class almost, or something like that. And so this faculty member liked the idea of an audio exam, either pre-review or a post-review, because audio was a better medium for getting something important across to the students. This one I love, director commentary on law review articles. So, I don't know, you all have rented DVDs where you watch the movie and then you want to see what the director's got to say while you're going by. right, well, imagine a boring law review article livened up by the author saying, well, at this point, this is what I really meant to say. Things like that. All right, maybe not a great idea, but the idea of director commentary got me onto ideas about DVDs or other things. And they got me onto Mystery Science DVD. Don't laugh, because I want to show you how I think this might work. Here's a situation where, let me show you here's a situation. Faculty they would go to the CALI website and run a lesson, but it would be in ClassCaster mode. So while they're running the lesson, they might come to a page where Larry Wilkins says something like, you know, blah, 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 and they go, oh, man, Larry's off his rocker again. Hits the record button and says, well, although Larry thinks this is what I'm going to be testing you on in my class. Or, I fully agree with the way Larry characterizes these things, blah, blah, blah. Hits the close button. Faculty gets a unique URL back, which would be like a permanent, like a lesson link, in how CALI uses that vernacular. And can give that to the student or post it on their Twin page or something. And then when the student runs the lesson, they will see a link there for that commentary. And they can play it. Now, it might look something like this. So here's I plucked the lesson out. Who did assumptions of risk? I tried to pick one that I thought somebody might be in the audience, but I forgot. This is just a screenshot, so I can't actually click it. But it might look like something like this, where there's a little dot, 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 and it says Professor Smith's commentary. That would only appear on the pages where some commentary was added. All right? So the student would click on that, and not only would they get the benefit of the CALI lesson, but they would get the benefit of the faculty member commenting on the CALI lesson. Now that's work for the faculty member, but it's less work than if they were typing these things up. Because for years we've said to faculty, if you want to grab one of our lessons and add commentary and we'll republish it, we even have an automated system for doing that called auto-publish. But almost nobody uses it. And we think it's because it's too high for the Luddite faculty or too high for a comfort factor. But being an armchair quarterback to a CALI lesson might lower the barrier and improve the situation for the student. Now, what you should be saying to yourself is, why stop there? How about if we got everybody's commentary appearing in certain versions of the lesson? Here's Professor Jones from Louisville, and Professor Quintel from Chicago Penn, and what the heck, Professor McFarland, the author of the lesson, has something to say too. Now that's sort of like director's commentary on a DVD. At which point, if a lot of people are doing this in a particular lesson or in particular situations, it almost becomes a comparative teaching or a co-teaching sort of situation. I don't know, my head started to reel about the possibilities of people listening to each other explain things and having the equivalent of sort of a blog-like conversation, but in an audio format. And then I'm starting to think, Elmer, can you program to search for the 7 words that aren't supposed to be said on the radio so that we can filter those out?
Maybe.
So we're going to have to think about that one. The FCC is on the space. They will be. Anyhow, that might be too intrusive to actually stick it in the text of that the author wrote. So, here, this is just an alternative here. Professor Smith's commentary coming as what's called a toolbar button, or something like that. All right? That's a little bit less intrusive. All right? So, I have another thing that I want to show you that comes from that, but I also wanted to pause at this point and get some feedback on this. Is this a completely stupid idea? Or is this like, you're going somewhere, but you're not to the right place yet? I mean, I've actually shown this to maybe 30 or 40 faculty in 6 different schools, and I've gotten reactions across the board, like, ridiculous, to, when can we have it? And I sort of don't know if we're missing some angle or twist on this that would make it a killer app or something really valuable. Well, you had your hand up first.
Yeah,
over
CNET Radio had a thing maybe a year ago or so where they broadcasted a program on the West Coast, and the guy every day talked for about 30 minutes or an hour about issues currently about IT. and you could subscribe to it, and you could download it. It was an MP3 file, and then it would just store it. And I used to click on it every morning. The trouble is, it was so memory intensive for some reason. The mechanism that got to your desktop, that it just overwhelmed my browser.
So if you got to download a 60-minute MP3, that's 30 megabytes, and you're not going to sit there and wait for it.
No,
So that's why that blog automatic piece makes this a little bit more realistic.
Well, they used other. There's a way you could hook into other people's computers, so it was like the Napster thing, so that if someone else had it around it, it would download in 15 minutes or 10 minutes or something like that, depending on if you agreed to have other people's, and then they would share it with you like that. So if you didn't want other people on your computer, then yes, it took an hour or it took whatever time it took to download that whole piece. But there was the sharing feature that if you subscribe to that portion of it. So this seems like a similar idea.
There's a hand up over there for a second.
Sometimes
And then Ken.
sometimes I've gotten like resistance to CALI lessons because the instructor may say, well, that's not my view of this particular topic. So maybe this is something that could give the instructor more control.
Right here, you can yell at it. Right. There was two hands up back there. Mark.
John, I think it's a great idea. What about the cost issues? Is there some way you could reduce the cost associated with the phone call, and that would scare folks off, it seems to me. And what about, or just
Yes,
handle maybe a YAP phone implementation?
Oh, absolutely. A SIP phone or a whole.
Asterisk will handle just about any VoIP protocols, so SIP, IAX, H323, as well as regular dial-up numbers. And we have a dial-up number that we use for this because that's sort of the easiest thing. But that dial-up number is actually a VoIP number that we essentially bought, so it's a direct inbound dial.
Why don't you just package as part of your roll-up a free dialing strategy like that? I bet people would just...
Right. Well, that's actually part of the plan. I mean, we don't have.
Well,
we're
certainly dial up over the internet, or maybe even local dial-up. Paying, it's scary to say we'll pay everybody's long distance bills if they become big users of something like this. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's the same sort of thing. I mean, the costs. We can get the number that we use is an Atlanta number. That's because that's where I was, so I got a local one, and it'll handle 4 incoming or outgoing calls, and it costs $11 a month. And that runs directly to the PBX bill, and it'll take calls coming and going. We don't use it for outgoing. There's an additional charge for that. Plus, we don't want to get into actually being the phone company. Not yet, anyway.
Not yet.
But it'll do SIP and all those other things too, right over the net.
Is password versus non-password the only gradient of control that the instructor has over who gets access to it, or?
No, of course not. It's since we're building the system, that's one of the things that we would. That's one of the things I'm partly wanting to talk about, to learn about where the gradations are for where the dial is, or the throttle for how much security or how much access. I've had faculty when I've told them about this say, people are going to download this and then I'm going to be a Napster or something like that. And I'm like, oh, you only wish. So it's not a model to sell your lectures, for sure. Now, before we got past the point, I wanted to make sure you knew. We're looking at doing this one of two ways or both ways, and we're not sure just because of the technology issues and things. One of them is we're going to put up a service and let people just use it. Create a blog, and then make phone calls and post, essentially an audio blog service, if you know what audio blog is, but a free one for CALI members, faculty, staff, and things like that. The second thing we're looking at is some way to give you the software, so that if you want to run your own ClassCaster server, you can. A Linux white box distro that's got the Asterisk pre-configured, Plog pre-configured, and all you have to do is a little bit of administration. And what I like about that is the non-techie schools that are like, just give this to my faculty, don't bother me, can just use the service. And the schools that want to experiment with this and play with this, and I'm thinking, Duke, because they gave iPods to so many people, but not the law school, of course. Could then take this and go do other things with it. And maybe even create a community around it of development of service applications that address some of those gradations of things. because I think it's brand new. I don't think it's obvious what the best way to do this with is. Yes?
You said you mentioned just to various faculty, you got various reactions. Have you told any students to see what their reaction is?
No. That's not true. I've talked to students who work for us and things, and their reaction is that I have enough to read. But what I think they're really saying is, but the point of this is it's not reading, and listening can be done during normally downtime, or at worst, it steals time away from things like watching TV or listening to bad music. You know what I'm saying?
Would that be anything recorded since 1995,
Yeah, darn right. I don't know what the heck those kids are listening to this year. I guess that's what I'm saying is, that sounds sort of cruel, but to say that educational content could compete with audio, other audio content otherwise, if it were at least available in that space. And what I love about this idea is it's got something interesting for the techie to play with if we can give you the software. It's got a low threshold for faculty that don't want to get into the technology. It's got a higher threshold if they want to download and play with the audio with Audacity, and do more sophisticated things. And faculty already lecture, and faculty already talk, and love to hear themselves talk about their classes. And so this is not a new medium, so to speak. It is, but it doesn't feel like a new medium when you start out. You know what I'm saying? Question?
For a school to get started with this, if they're a CALI school, you guys will provide the service?
Yeah, your CALI school will give you, you'll register the CALI website, then you can create your own blog and rock and roll.
And then as far as the phone calls go, that would be something that the school will need to set up separate from what you guys have? Or
That's your phone call, basically.
so it's just a phone call?
It's just a phone call.
Okay.
Yeah, that was going to be one of our taglines, right? Education, it's just a phone call.
One other thing about that, with the way that the blogging software is set up, or the way that the blogging software operates, you don't need to use, like you can record MP3s using something else. A digital, portable digital recorder, you can use Audacity right on the desktop, and then upload the MP3s that way.
Yeah.
The microphone in the classroom.
Right. We're not describing the only way to get audio, but like a really easy way.
Well, no, it can do video.
Okay, tell me.
Well, no, the blogging software in and of itself will support the ability to attach anything.
Right, remember I said enclosures are binary?
Right.
Why not video files?
When was the last time you slept with telling video content in the long planet?
Okay, cool.
That's a different discussion.
No, the problem with video is actually, besides the fact that bandwidth is still a problem, the problem with video is on the consumption side. It's like, okay, I have to stop and whatever I'm doing and watch it. I can't watch video while I'm driving. Well, you can, but I can't. I can't, well, maybe I can watch it when I'm in the gym, but you know what I mean? I can listen to things, whereas I can't watch things as well. So, Joe.
We're actually beginning to work on this, and we see a great utility because we have so many students who English is a second language.
Oh, man.
And so they can modulate the speed or play it again or play it slowly or...
Well, this goes to Peter Martin in his class. He basically said one of the things that students liked the best about audio was a feature he called Pause a Professor. What was that? And playing it over and things like that. And then I have gotten that. The students that I've talked to, or I've heard from Peter Martin students about that sort of thing. All right. Now, the other idea is, let's say you go whole hog. You're a faculty member. You record your 16 weeks of 3 lectures a week. And when you're done, what have you got? You got 48 hours of audio, or less, because you probably don't lecture the whole 60 minutes. You lecture for 30, then there's question and answers. I don't know. You have this clump of content, which you then can turn into several things. You could go through and re-listen to it, and pull out snatches as sort of like a greatest hits, and you give that back to your students as the exam review, or a preview. Sort of a preview show, like those shows that do like snips from the things, and you hand that to students before they come to class. Watch this so that you get an idea of what we're going to cover. Or things that can be used to recruit students. You know, at this point, the mind starts to boggle. What's possible if you have good content and the willingness to do something more with it? How about packaging it onto CDs and selling it at Barnes & Noble? Guess what? Barnes & Noble sells something called the Professor Series. What's it called? The Portable Professor Series. And they only had one under law, and it was like great Supreme Court cases, and it wasn't even a law professor. It was a history professor. And so I thought, well, this is something that could just happen. Because then I started to think about the MIT Open Knowledge Institute, where they put all their things up. Why don't they put their lectures up? Now, I'm not saying people are going to want to do that. You know, most won't. But if some do, then it becomes, then a whole bunch of other things here become possible. How about faculty who have never taught a class listening to other faculty's lectures first, so they get an idea of what and how things are covered? How about a database of great 3-minute explanations of key legal terms, sort of like a audio wiki Lex.
Audio X.
Audio Lex, right? You didn't know about Lex. You know, I remember, well, this is very intriguing because it's like a whole new model, and since there's so many people that have MP3 players, it becomes probable at least. Was there a hand up in the back there? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
My comment is more towards the blog feature versus the classroom application part of it. I think that for the blog, it's very useful. It gives people very quick access to record it and then to upload it on the internet. What my concern would be for the classrooms, for the lectures that you're recording 16 for 3 classes or whatever. I know that the professors are from University of Illinois in Champaign, and if you have professors, if I say, oh no, you just use your cell phone and call up, use your internet service, that's not going to fly with them. You have to say, here's our equipment, here's how you do it. If you could integrate it with a landline that we have, and they're using some sort of microphone receiver that they wear, and then it's uploaded that way, but without the whole intimidation factor of the computer, I think that would be a very useful application, and it gets rid of the whole setting up a microphone with the computer and then having to upload it on the, our website or those sorts of things. So I guess that was just my comment of it's a different, I guess you have to look at it differently from a blog perspective than a class.
I would agree.
I do have a lot of commentary from legal writing folks.
No, we just funked this up, and then Elmer went from like zero to prototype in like 4 weeks.
So what about the legal
And I gave
writing
him a raise.
instructor who has to write comments all over a paper?
Yeah, how about audio comments?
Right, audio comments. I think they probably really want that.
You are the weakest link.
Have you heard of any like library applications? Like if, for example, if you wanted to do quick things about new websites or things that probably people might not read.
Well, sure. I mean, the whole idea of podcasting is all built into this. All I'm doing is taking the idea of podcasting, which covers the whole universe, and narrowing it down to just educational podcasting, you might say. But then, did you want to say something about CALI Radio and the interviews that you're doing today and tomorrow?
Well, that would fit into this, exactly. What I've been doing is talking with law professors who have written CALI lessons and interviewing them for 8 to 15 minutes, not as a, well, here's what I covered in the lesson and here's the tricky answer to question 7, but a little bit larger, stepping back, saying, here's the theme. For example, I talked this morning with Scott Burnham about parole evidence, and I don't think we talked on anything specific in his lesson, but instead, what are the tricky concepts of learning parole evidence rule and aspects of it. And then we're planning to put that, Elmer and I have talked, we're going to put that up on the CALI website in 2 places. It'll have its own place where you can download these audio files, again, to be MP3, listen to on your iPod. And then the second place is next to the lesson. So the student goes to download the lesson, and here's this link that says, here's a professor who wrote this lesson, giving you another 10 minutes on their version of why this area of law is difficult or challenging, or how I would approach this.
You like the movie, you might like the bubblegum.
Right, I talked to Robin Craig about Clean Water Act jurisdiction in January at AALS, and we recorded 10 minutes of nothing about her lesson, but instead Robin giving examples of how she would approach the statutory interpretation, how she would approach trying to learn a problem or solve a problem in this area. So this feeds directly into it, and we're just making more content.
And what you're hearing is we're trying to slice and dice or experiment with different content structure models. You know, it's not just talking, it's talking about specific things. And you have to understand, it's like programming, a radio programming. You have to sort of understand what people want to hear, and you have to describe it in a way that they can get at it for when they want it. And those are hard things because there isn't a lot of literature on audio education that is this easily constructed. Because this is not studio produced. This is like almost, it's a little off the cuff. It's a little informal. But it needs a sort of a quality control piece to it as well. Now, this led me to, there's another project that's semi-related to this that I wanted to show you. And it's even more experimental because it's totally in the idea prototype stage. But I've got such a good crowd here that I want to get feedback. And this one is kind of wacky, all right? It's basically CALI DVD. And what do I need to do? I need to move this from here to here, right? Well, I know you've all rented DVDs, and guess what? DVDs have menus on them, right? What is a menu? It's just a screenshot with some hotspots that you can move a mouse around, granted by using an up and down arrow, and then enter, or choosing. Let me see if I can get that to work first. Just kind of thinking about it. There we are. So, I'm not well prepared for this part because I just decided at the last minute to talk about this morning. So here's the idea. We would write a program that would walk through CALI lessons taking screenshots and remember where the XY coordinates are of the buttons. Then we would write another program that would take that and turn it into a series of essentially DVD menus. So it would be like a DVD without any video on it, just menus, right? I'm using menu in terms of the DVD technology. But from the student's viewpoint, it would look like this, right? Here's a DVD menus example. I'm playing this DVD on this computer. And this looks really bad. It looks really bad on the screen. And we already know there are some things we have to do, like increase the size of type, sharpen things up, reduce some of the complexity. The green is where the hotspots are. Right? Obviously, we would make that more aesthetic or more color coordinated. But this is exactly what they would see if they started this CALI demo lesson. Right? When I click on that, it basically looks like it just did a scroll, but all it did was go to another DVD menu that was a snapshot of the next of that information. Right? So let's close that and pick something here. I'll go to introduction and click on that. How do I get the window here? Go away.
Oh, they can't see that.
Oh, they can't? Oh, good. Oh, good. So here's like the front screen, and it's, as you can see, obviously lots of text on the screen ready to be part. Now, why would we do this? The students can download the lessons, they can run them themselves, they can run them off the website. And then I thought, well, when you're working on a computer in a way, your posture is one of 1.5 feet away. But when you're watching something on TV, your posture is one of 10 feet away and more relaxed. And maybe they could use this to have like CALI drinking games. No, maybe they could. Maybe they would like group study or learning in a more relaxed atmosphere or a more relaxed posture. And since it's just a matter of software, although we haven't written the software, I did this totally manually by hand, just to make a prototype to test. If it's just a piece of software, well, then it would be very intriguing. You press a button, the student gets the DVD, and they can either run the lessons on the website, get them from the CD, or pop them in their TV and watch CALI TV, essentially. All right? Now, take this idea, vary it to ClassCaster that's got the video coming someday, and what we got? We got almost a DVD lesson authoring system is where we're headed. That's where I'm headed, at least. Where faculty will video themselves, be able to ask interactive questions that keep score, press a button and it will give them a DVD ISO, with them on it, and they would give that to their student as teaching materials. Is that a totally wacky idea?
As long as they get paid.
Well, sure. Let me go to a multiple choice question so you get an idea of how that works. Multiple choice.
Okay.
Empire State Building, wrong. Go ahead.
Have you asked these students about
what they think of this idea, since it's a different way?
No, this is last week. I literally really put this together Wednesday last week.
I'd be curious to know what they'd say.
I know, we definitely got to do like some focus groups or ask some students some things. But I thought, what an opportunity, let's ask you.
Make it to a Sony PlayStation or something.
Interesting question. Well, right, I'm playing this on the computer, so I'm obviously using a mouse, but if this was a DVD, you can sit there with your clicker and doing that. And clickers in the classroom seem to be getting popular.
As Carrie says, competitive CALI.
Sorry?
Competitive CALI.
Ooh, got me.
CALI lessons currently, I think I understand, require a certain amount of data being retained, unique to each session. If there's a DVD, I don't know the answer to that question.
Got like 16 registers where you can put some numbers. So, and it's hard. This is like assembly language programming. So you can actually save some score information, but, and there's some question types that are just out of the question, like essays and fill in the blanks. And so I have a feeling most CALI lessons wouldn't translate well because they're too textual, and reading on a television screen lots of text is just over the top. But maybe it's a drill and practice thing where people, you know, let's say we have a pool of thousands of multiple choice questions like in income tax. You know, people could just sit there and flip through them as a way to study or something like that. Or if they're on an airplane, where people now have these personal DVD players all over the place. Here's a way of using that platform to steal some entertainment time away from students so that they use it for education instead. But it's their choice, of course. I mean, I'm just saying, there's students who like to read, there's students who like to see, there's students who like to listen, and in different situations, different students might say, you know, I got a lot out of that because it was on a DVD format. And for us, if it's just a matter of software, you know, then that's not the decider. The decider is whether it actually has value for some students.
Yeah, I think that.
Sorry, I was pointing at you. Blank. Oh. Didn't you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did.
Sorry, you did.
Oh. But you
I saw it. Okay. Go ahead. Go first.
Okay. I think the issue of size, just like in a PowerPoint presentation, you have to have at least 20-point or 24-point text.
Yeah.
I think it looks good here because we've got a 10-foot screen, but the issue of that much text on a television, even if it's 27-inch, would be daunting. So you'd have to compose it, you know, in the 20-point or greater text size, so that even if you're sitting across the room 10 feet or so.
Yeah, I agree. Text, lots of text would be a problem in this situation. So this would have to be a drill. Maybe it would only be appropriate for a drill and practice sort of situation. CALI Jeopardy, right? Game show type thing.
DVDs usually have scene selection, you know, using a particular moment in the film that you can recognize as a transition from one piece to another. So that's visible from a long distance. That you can sit 10, 12, 15 feet away and still pick off the scene. So that's probably the way you have to catalog it. Because A is already a learned behavior. B is visual, so I don't know how you visualize parts of the lesson. But I don't know how, I think you're absolutely right.
Here's how you would visualize parts of the lesson. Oh, I don't know how many old timers are in here. I'm old enough to remember the Harvard video discs and Glansman's work and Arthur Miller's CD videos and things like that. You know, and so I'm already saying, well, that's proved itself to be workable if you can do it. You know, and so I'm aiming for a situation where those could be more easily produced. Those were incredibly difficult to produce, very staff intensive and things like this. And here's a possibility of having, you know, a cheaper or less expensive way of producing those. And when you can do something less expensively, then you can do more of it and experiment more. You can cycle the experimentation more. This is what I'm saying. And that's interesting to me, because that's what CALI's about. Question?
The whole DVD prospect doesn't seem very viable in sort of like this web kind of context. But as far as going back to the blog that you were creating with all the audio content, seeing as there's, as you mentioned before, if you're making audio content with all of your lectures, this can be a very big audio file for a student to be downloading if they want to go back and review it. if you put it on a DVD in this kind of format, it would give it all in a format that's easy to distribute and easy to navigate through. Something like a TV format that would have good audio options as far as listening to that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right. That's all I've got to say. It was part showing you about ClassCaster, part getting feedback, and part showing you about something completely new and weird. And you know, if you come up with other ideas or thoughts after this, after the conference, you know, send it to me. I'd love to hear from you because I think one person doesn't have all the good ideas, but what did he say? Many eyes make all bugs shallow. Well, many minds make all ideas good, or something like that.
What's the rollout schedule on ClassCaster?
We'll be doing a limited beta starting July 1st. I've got a couple of technical things that will just require me to have a couple of days. Not unlike this day where I can just do one thing all day long and just solve a couple of technical things. But actually, it's stuff that has to do with security and access control. That's the thing right. That's the thing right now for that sort of thing. But right now we're looking at a July 1st beta sort of situation, and hopefully people will be able to use that, of course, in the fall. And then we may have something that we could actually distribute to schools if they wanted to start trying it out on their own sometime in August.
Yeah, in the fall. Great. Any other questions? Thank you for coming.